Hi, welcome back to the Always Right podcast. I'm author Karisa Delay.
And I'm Sleepy Jamie.
Sleepy Jamie.
That's why, because I said I'm tired.
He's like, I'm tired. I'm like, you're gonna wake up.
It's because my wife, like when outfits and stuff, she's into Halloween, and she was just picking out stuff and going through stuff from last year, and so we were up late, and then she's up at like 4. I'm like, I don't want to get up this early, but I did. So here we are.
For outfits.
Yeah, because I know, like, we're organic, so. As we film this, it is Halloween. Happy Halloween, even though that's not how it'll come out.
Yeah, that episode came out like 3 weeks ago.
Yes. So, but my wife was like, I ordered this 80s thing for work, and then she wasn't happy with it, and she's like, I don't know what to do. You want me to run again? No. So she's got like scarecrow, skeleton. She got like 40 costumes up there, and she's going through and nitpicking, doing this. This morning, she's like, will you shove some straw down in my shoes? So
she can go to work?
Yes, as a scarecrow.
Okay. I thought, like, why is Diane up at 4 a.m. wanting to just? She's like, I can't sleep. I need to decide on this costume.
Had to do the scarecrow makeup, so I was up late. I'm old. I like to go to bed by 8 or 9, and she kept me up until like 10 or 11. Anyway, poetry. Poetry.
Hey, today's episode, we are going to talk about poetry.
Yeah, this is kind of where you can rhyme all the time, and it's not a crime. I actually use that when I'm doing songwriting. I'm like, don't rhyme all the time. It's a crime, but we're talking about poetry.
My music guy's so corny. My voice coach is corny.
Yeah. So
yes, and I was looking this morning because I was revamping my set behind here for keeping me on point with things. Like, I have these little black Post-it notes that keep me like, this is what I have to do for the day, and I take them off. Once I've done them, I see my stack, and I'm like, okay, this is what I've done. But then to the side, it was kind of blank. I'm like, I need to put my other stuff over there. And one of the things I put over there were the Always Right podcast words and phrases.
Yep.
And flowetry was on there.
Good.
Poetry that flows.
So we don't need poetry because we're going to do flowetry.
Yes, we have flowetry with our poetry.
All right, what is poetry?
So let's define poetry. This is the artistic expression of emotion, thoughts, and ideas through structured use of language. And it's interesting because I remember reading poetry, and if it didn't rhyme, I felt weird.
Yeah, I was the same way. But I mean, when we were a kid, you're like, roses are red, violets are blue. I forget the rest. How about you? I don't remember what the rest of the poem was.
Really? Roses are red, violets are blue.
Something is pink, and I love you, or something like that.
Red, violets are blue, blah, 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 and I love you. Yeah, I don't know what that middle part is. Mm-hmm. I think you can make it up. I think you can just say whatever with that part.
Steven Tyler loves pink. He always had the pink frilly things on his microphone stand. We'll just throw that in there.
No, it would have to rhyme with red. Roses are red, violets are blue.
No, It didn't rhyme with
blue rhymes with you.
I know, but it didn't rhyme in the original poem. It wasn't like roses are red, violets are blue. You're going to be dead because I love you. I remember like roses are red, violets are blue. Something is pink, and I love you.
All right, hold on.
Yeah.
Roses are red, violets are blue. Let's look at this one.
And we're doing an episode on poetry. We don't even know this poem.
Well, because I forgot that one. That one's one of those. It's kind of like the Seven Dwarfs, where you know them, but then you always forget one.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So roses are red. Oh yes, roses are red, violets are blue, sugar sweet, and I love you.
Oh, yes. Sugar.
So it doesn't even rhyme with red.
Yeah.
So you can really put whatever you want there, honestly.
Yeah, but it still gets you in that rhyme scheme. You and blue.
Yeah.
And like I said, even in songs are sort of a, vocalized poetry, sustained speech.
And something we've discussed in a previous episode, that poetry does not fall in the realm of prose. It's not considered prose.
No, but you may see meter and rhyme in songs and other things, but it's definitely not prose. I mean, when you're writing a fiction novel, you're not thinking, I got to rhyme every other line, what's coming out of my character's mouth. But we do have those type of characteristics in poetry. We have the meter and the rhyme. So a lot of us, like, roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet.
Wine costs less. No.
Yes. But that's meter. Dun, 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 dun.
I'm reading some of these ones now. I should have went down this rabbit hole because it's like this one's kind of dark. It's like roses are red, violets are blue, sugar bowl's empty, just like you. Wow, it's deep and very
Indeed.
cool. All right. Anyways, so back to the topic at hand, poetry. Okay. Yeah. So go ahead. Continue.
Meter and rhyme. We just covered that. Meter is like the cadence of it. It's the being in the pockets, having that phrasing. There's a lot of imagery and symbolism. Roses are red. That's all you're thinking about, a red rose. Violets are blue. Sugar is sweets.
All the things that you like. All the things that are.
Yep.
So it kind of coincides with love.
Yes. And then that brings in emotional resonance and conciseness. Poems are very concise to the point. They're not. Well, some of them are wordy, but they do stick to a pattern. Like it's easier for me to remember a poem. Of course we didn't remember Roses Are Red, but that's been since childhood. But you get in that cadence and the rhythm and the rhyming, and you're like, oh, it's so concise. It's easier to remember that. But
yes.
And they do bring up that emotional response. Go ahead.
It's a quicker read, even though if they're long, it's like there is that, like you said, that measure, that rhythmic part to it. But even line by line, and I think about this with people who write songs. What are they thinking? What is the euphemism or the metaphoric way that they're trying to express something? They may not directly say it, but they might be expressing it through a line that you're like, oh wow, that's a really good line right there. It means this. It doesn't literally mean this. It means something else. That's very common with those emotional inputs with poetry.
Absolutely. I'm just sitting here trying to go through poems in my mind I can remember, and a couple of them I can't recite anyway. I won't even begin them. So dirty limericks.
What is it?
Dirty limericks. So, but yep.
So let's go through the history of poetry. The history of poetry, it spans thousands of years. It's rooted in like that. We see this all the time. That ancient tradition of oral myths and stuff, and some of these stories that passed down through generations. Prominent early examples, of course, is like the Iliad, Odyssey from Homer's.
Yeah, I remember reading that, and you'd fall into that as you're reading through the book, and you had that rhyme and meter. So
yeah. And a lot of times when you talk about poetry and we are talking about the emotions and the imagery, it does leave you kind of like as a personal interpretation where we talk about leaving your readers to figure it out. This is kind of what poetry does. Sometimes it's not deliberately telling you what's happening, but it leaves you kind of like in an awe of the emotion that the writer has left with you. Like whether it's a sonnet or whatever.
And I kind of wonder, since it wasn't like they had a printing press, we've talked about this before, it takes the scribes a long time to write something out. If poem was a way to pass on the stories because they were easily remembered,
Yeah.
Oh, we're playing that game then, are we?
I don't make as much noise as you do, though. You make a lot of noise when you're drinking. It's almost like it really sounds like you were peeing.
Just now?
Yes, because it's like.
Oh, I was like trying to be quiet, and I just kept drinking. I want to keep drinking until she stops talking, but then I got full.
That's funny.
So I was going to try to make you laugh, but it didn't work.
I was laughing on the inside.
Okay, that's all I care about. So, like in the medieval period, we saw an emergence of lyrical poetry and ballads, and they were heavily influenced by religious themes and then the conventions of courtly love. Yes, I'm reading Chris's notes. I wrote some notes this week.
Before that, though, there were Greek and Roman poets. Though there were a lot of there were a lot that did such the epics and a lot of the things that were that dramatic type poetry.
But yes, we got to think. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's okay. What were you
just thinking? Go ahead.
Okay. I want you to tell me what you were thinking because I can remember what I was going to say.
I was just going to say, as you think about it, when I think about Shakespeare, literally I think about a play. So I didn't think about poetry, but in truth, that's exactly what he was. Mm-hmm. He was a poet. And like, I forget the movie with Shakespeare with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire
Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, Romeo and Juliet, and how poetic it was. I'm like, wow, this is kind of where I was like, oh, I forgot about this in high school, reading this, how poetic his lines were for his actors for these plays. So it
Yeah.
was like
Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Yes.
Yes, because there's so many different versions. There's so many types of poetry that for me it was easily overlooked. I was like, wow, that is poetry throughout every line that he's written.
Yeah. So you did mention, the period of the medieval times where there was that emergence of lyrical poetry, these themes and conventions of like courtly love, all that stuff. But the Renaissance kind of marked with the Shakespeare time, this resurgence, I should say, of interests of classical themes with poets like Shakespeare and John Donne, exploring these human experiences and emotions, like in Romeo and Juliet, where people are bound by their family's division, but then they cross the lines and seize their ultimate fate. The evolution continued through the 17th and 19th century with the Baroque. Ooh, when I hear the word Baroque, I think of Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm.
Baroque period. And as I always say, if it's not wrong, you don't fix it.
I would do that, but I would just sound
Cogsworth
Kentuckian.
says that. I was like, it's Baroque. You don't fix it. Anyways, the 20th century introduced modernism, characterized by experimentation and styles seen as in like T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound, leading this diverse dramatic landscape of what we know as poetry today. It kind of it changed the setting and the I feel like it kind of pushed the boundaries of what poetry could be. It didn't have to be within this. It had a little bit more room to grow as different styles of poetry. Like growing up, when I think of poetry, not as a person or style, I always think of haikus and tankus.
Yep.
Those were like the ones. It's like, that you had to write in school, and I would just be like, doing the syllables on my chin. Okay. What separates poetry, darling, from other types of writing?
Did I read it?
Well, I mean, listen. When Jamie tells you he's in the notes in the morning, I know he's in the notes in the morning because this morning I was adding in a few things that I had looked up overnight and I had forgot to import into our notes.
Where I was getting ready to
Yes, and I see it says Jamie's in the notes. I'm like, oh, it's almost like you see someone, but they don't know that you're there. You're like creeping on them.
Well, I was going through and cleaning it up to put all the different types of poetry. Mm-hmm. But and then I don't know if you kind of wrote, you beat me to it.
Yes.
He's like, I was like, okay, I don't need to post.
Yeah, he's literally types, and because you had it to the bottom, and I moved it up, and you're like, wait. And so then I'm like, copy, because I had it in another document, and I literally went copy paste. And you're like, oh, you beat me to it.
I was just trying to help. I'm like, because I always feel guilty. Like she's like, I'm over here writing all these notes. I'm like,
say that.
I know you don't. I know that's on me. But I'm like, because last night you shared, I was like, I better get in there. Definitely read through this.
Well, I started the notes yesterday morning, so that way I could give you a baseline of what was going on. But then on Grammarly, when I'm writing stuff and putting things in there or whatever, and like doing a little bit more research in between, I cut and paste and put it in there. And I did that this morning, and then I added my poem in there, things like that. And I was like, yeah, so I just wanted you to have the notes to know that it was there.
No, it was good. It inspired me. What makes it different from other forms like prose or this? Well, with poetry, there is a unique structure and a use of language. Like if you read a poem, or even if we go back to Romeo and Juliet, you're not going to talk to your friends like, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? You're not going to, told you I'd sound Kentuckian if I did this. But there is this rhyme and meter that separates it. It's not, it is everyday language, but not how you would speak to someone else. There's specific forms. There's, like you mentioned, the haikus. There's sonnets. There is free verse. Like sometimes a version that's called slamming, where you'll have a poet get up and it'll be like, and they'll just say words like, dark, abysmal, blah 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 blah. Check it. So it isn't your normal thing.
Very jazzy.
I actually went to that. A friend of mine, Jeff Capers, who's we know, we've kind of helped him with a book. He is an artist, great artist. So he had an art gathering, and he had a lot of slammers there. And I almost thought about getting up and reciting one of my songs. And I thought, nah, I can't do it as cool as these guys. And I'd have to sing it. It wouldn't be this because I'd forget my own lyrics. But there was this free verse. They incorporate line breaks and stanzas, and that enhances the meaning and the flow of the poem. Like you said, when you were in school doing the haikus or the tenkus, it was like, it was a very specific form that you had to follow. Like you said, you were doing this and you could not break from that, or that your teacher would be like, nope, fail, you didn't follow the pattern.
Yeah, was it 3-5-3 or 5-7-5?
Yep.
Yeah. You know, and you're talking about this flow and talking about these things, these meters, and you think about it, poetry is almost like a spoken song.
Yeah, it's got a musical quality to it.
Yeah, yeah, and it engages people as a reader. It's a very show don't tell.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You're not necessarily telling them everything. A lot of it is interpreted based on what emotion you invoke to the reader. So there's that part of the poetry that
I think of. I mean, rap has evolved over the years, but I remember back in the 80s and 90s, bands like Houdini. Friends is a word you use every day. Most of the time, you use it in the wrong way. It was a poet. It was a poem set to a beat. You know, so a lot of rappers were just poets with, you know, they would present their poetry with a lot of energy, spoken poetry, and they had that rhythm going with whatever the, you know. Yes, back to,
you never know what
forget the
Jamie's
rap, and let's move on and back into poetry.
Yes. All right. Well, let's talk about types of poetry.
Okay. This works. This is perfect.
For those who didn't know this, I edited the last part out of the episode where Jamie literally threw his iPad on the floor a couple times.
3 times.
Yes. You got to see the ceiling and the floor and then nothing.
Yeah, I bought the snooze stand to kind of lift me up, and apparently it's just brought me down. So, listen, as I'm reading this, you talk about the types of poetry. I remember going through all this in school. I can't remember any of this, like a sonnet. As soon as you have a 14-line poem, often written in the iambic parameter, I remember this from like 10th grade, but of course I would not be able to tell you what a sonnet was without Carissa's notes here.
Yes. Yeah, so you have the Shakespearean, or the English sonnet. This consists of 3 quadrants. Quatrains? Quatrains. Yes.
I
3
want to hop on the quatrain.
Yeah, jump on the quatrain. It's in the underground too, darling.
Next to 93 quarter.
Yes, yes. So it consists of 3 quatrains followed by a couplet with a rhyme scheme. So ABA, BCD, CDE, FE, FGG. Like I remember this.
Watch this. Let me redo it. ABAB, CDCD, EFEFGG.
Yes. Okay. Wow. Show off. Show off. Whatever. Fine.
You get to say this next one because I can't even pronounce that.
Oh. Petrican?
I would have said Pet or Chan. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Or Petricaran? I don't know. Let's see here. You should probably insert this into Google and ask it to say how to spell it or how to say it. Let's do that right now. If we insert this into our handy dandy notebook case, let's let it tell us how to say it. Petrarchan.
Really? Petrarchan.
Not Korean.
Petrarchan.
No.
Petrarchan.
Petrarchan.
All right. Listen to Carissa, not to me.
I'll listen to the voice on Google. On Google.
This is divided. This type of sonnet is divided into an octave and a sestet. Woo!
Why are there words that we don't know how to say?
I don't know, because I need to start wearing my glasses, except I look too dorky. Typically following the rhyme scheme, ABBA, ABBA for the octave.
Abba.
Yeah, ABBA.
Abba.
I like that band.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anyway, so the Petrarchan sonnet. This is more Italian.
Petrarchan.
Whatever.
Okay.
Confident.
Go ahead.
All right. No, it's fine because I put it in there, and it's one of those things because it's just a different type of sonnet. But I don't ever remember learning this one.
I don't either.
So I remember the Shakespearean style. I remember all that, like all those little letters, and it super confused me when I was in English.
I don't even remember sestet, but I mean, I'm sure we covered it. I just, that's been decades ago.
Right.
Back before dinosaurs.
Now haikus.
Now we're getting
Haikus.
somewhere. Now I'm comfortable.
Somewhere I recognize, yes.
Yeah.
So haikus. This is the traditional Japanese that consists of 3 lines with the syllable pattern of 5-7-5. It often captures a moment in nature. So, but I do remember learning these and it being very, scenery type. It wasn't just like, I did this, do. It was very like you're trying to imagine nature. You're seeing the world. I remember the ones that I read. Now, when the kids in my class would write them and you had to write your own haiku, it was never about really nature. It was just something silly and fun.
Yeah, I was thinking about famous haiku. See if they even have one. Yeah,
While you're
like
go ahead.
But these don't really. These are 4 lines. Okay, now I see what it is. Like winter seclusion, listening that evening to the rain in the mountain would be one by Kobayashi Issa. So
you can say these words way better than actual English words.
Man, can't I?
Yes, because you do that often when you talk about some of the different people with meditation and things like that. You just flies off your tongue naturally. But then when you're like normal words, you're like, I can't talk.
I'm like, I can wait. What is it? Yep, I can remember once. That's about where it's at. Free verse.
Free verse.
Let's play free verse. No, you mean free bird or free verse?
No, free verse. Yes,
Okay.
this is poetry that adheres to it does not adhere to the regular meter or rhyme schemes. It allows more freedom and expression and format. These are the kind. Sorry, don't hate. I don't like these kinds because it makes me feel. I feel like it's like an OCD thing with the sound that it doesn't rhyme all the time. So therefore I make it it's a crime.
Yeah. No, I dig it. It's the same thing with kind of like with that slamming. It's slam poetry is the kind of same thing, but there is, I think a lot of slammers come in kind of prepared and they do try to keep a rhythm and a rhyming. But when you're like, if I was to do free verse, like podcasting with Karisa, slamming the table, iPad falls, it's done.
Yeah.
To me, that's just dumb.
Well, it's that jazz, like that feel, yeah.
Yeah. And then everyone's like, you dig it?
I dig it. Well, now there's a limerick. This is the
humorous. I can't touch this.
This is the humorous 5-line poetry with real, like a specific meter. It's the AABBA rhyme scheme, so for those, when we have all these letters, AA and BBA. So those 3 are together, how they come together, and then the 2 B's.
Yeah, that's the rhythm and the rhyme.
Yes.
Yeah. I can't even repeat one of these. Okay. But yes, all right. It's going to rhyme. 2 lines rhyme, the next 2 lines rhyme, and then the 5th line rhymes with the first 2.
Yes, yep. Yes. A ballad. So a ballad is a narrative poem that tells a story with a musical quality. Ballads typically utilize quatrains with alternating rhyme. And this is something I feel like 21 Pilots does. They do things that you think it doesn't rhyme, but it sounds great. And that doesn't bother me because he will do things that when he's writing stuff, Tyler, that you can see that there's not necessarily a rhyme, but it fits together as an imagery story. Even though it doesn't sound like a ballad, a lot of things I think he writes are very ballad-like. You're next.
Acrostic. This is a poem where the first letter of each line spells out a word or a message when read vertically. Oh my gosh. We had to do this in middle school, but we did it for like our favorite teachers. So like one of my favorite teachers was Mr. Green, the band director. And I forget what it was, but it spelled out his name. It was probably a classic and I just don't remember it.
Oh no, it's in this one.
Wrong book, page 132.
So I did this, and I love doing this.
Wouldn't you freak out if it was on page 132?
It's not on 132 because it's at the end of the book.
Okay, I tried.
You tried. So I did this at the end of Crystal Gate. And one of the characters, she went through a portal. And so they're technically having a funeral for her, but there's no body. And the devil and another person are there. And the devil doesn't come up to the funeral thing. He's just standing there in like frustration to the side, the character that plays the devil. And so the other character, I'm not giving names because if you haven't read it, I don't want to tell you who the devil is. But the other guy goes up and he's like, what are you doing? He's like, her body's not there. And then the one is given a note by someone. And the devil, he's like, I was supposed to give this to you if I saw you today. And the note, because it kind of leads into the next book. Each line. Okay, so I'm going to read this one just because, I thought of it. I don't know why I thought about this earlier, but death can only be taken through a door that is opened by one key. Exhausted by what your eyes may see and torn by fear living in your heart. Vibrance radiates through the crystal gate where only the angels can stay. In the beginning, 13 pieces did a tree bear. The one below will set her free. Love can only be conquered through the sacrificing of everything. With love, Lilith.
D-E-V. Yep.
D-E-V-I-L. But spelled out devil. And it was from Lilith, of course. We all know not all of us, but most people know the story of Lilith. I had wrote this little note, but each line was spelled out the word devil. But anyways, I do that a lot where I use the words in a text message for my characters, and you don't catch it because it makes sense what they're saying. But if you put the words together, it actually would give you a clue who you're talking to. Anyways.
That's why your texts are like, Jamie, you need to do this. Decide today what you want to do. Have a great day, though. Definitely do what I tell you to do.
Yes, I'm going to start doing that to you. I'm going to make
all of our see if I catch it.
Yes, I'm going to, yeah. Yes. I'm going to make,
right.
Yes, I'm going to make them all acrostic.
All right, so the next one, Ode.
Ode, a formal, often ceremonious lyric poem that addresses a particular subject and expresses deep feelings or thoughts. Ode de toilette. No, I'm kidding.
Yep.
Elegy. This is a mournful or reflective poem that typically is lamenting the loss of someone or something.
It's lamenting, not laminating. I've never been laminated.
I think it's lamenting.
Yes, lamenting.
It's not laminating. It's none of the above.
No. I loved it, though. I thought it was funny. It's like going with my t-shirt guy, and he's like, I think I'll have an omelette this morning. A what? Yes. Oh, an omelet.
Yes. A millet. It sounds very sophisticated when you say a millet, though.
Yes, a millet. So, let me say this one. So I screwed up. A cinquain, and I'm sure that's not right. A 5-line poem that can follow various patterns focusing on creative, vivid imagery. So with this, you don't have like with the tanka where you have a pattern and you have to have the syllables. Mm-hmm. You just have a 5-line poem. And you can mix up the patterns and do whatever.
Which is funny because it's the tanka. I always knew it as tanku, not a tanka.
See? Oh, really? I thought it was tanku. And I just said tanka.
It is tanka, but I've always knew it
toy.
As a tanku. No, not a tonka.
It's a tanku toy. I forgot. Yeah, I'm getting
so tanka or tanku. This is another form of the Japanese poetry, like a haiku, consisting of 5 lines with syllable patterns like 5, 7, 5, 7, 7. But actually, I think I'm lying. I think a tanku is 3, 5, 3. Maybe.
I thought that was no, that's a haiku. No, you're right. Yeah, that's a 5, 7, 5 for haiku.
5, 7, 5 for haiku. And then the tanka is 5, 7, 5, 7, 7. So that's 5 lines. Yeah, because I think a tanku is 3 lines, but the syllables are different.
Yep.
Yes. And then you have concrete poetry. This is a visual form of poetry in which the arrangement of words and letters creates a shape or an image that relates to the poem and theme. Have you ever seen that? I can't
think of one. No, I can't think of one, but that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah. I've seen this a couple times. Sestina? Is that what this one is? Sestina? This is the complex form of consisting of 6 stanzas of 6 lines each, followed by 3-line envoy. Envoy?
I've heard it pronounced envoy.
Okay. And this
involves...
on
how close you are to Kentucky. Sorry.
This involves the repetition of end words with the first stanza throughout the poem. Interesting. You've talked about slam poetry.
Yeah, it's just kind of like the free verse, but they do try to keep some sense of rhyme or reason. When I've seen slammers doing their thing, it is very vocal, very energetic, very dynamic. You're changing your volume to create emotion within the listener.
Yeah. Back to that concrete poetry. Sometimes you can go on Etsy. Because I've seen this before, and I did this before whenever we were in class, where you take an image. So you're writing a song or writing a piece of poetry about the guitar. You write the words, and it's shaped like a guitar.
Okay, then I've seen that before, like in the shape of a rose or something, and you got to read closer. Yep.
Yeah. So the image itself is what the poetry is kind of embodying, right? Hold on. There was something I wanted to, because I want to clarify. I want to make sure I say this here. Tanku. I'm saying thank you. Okay. Thank you. Why is it not giving me?
I would help you with my second iPad, but then I would just knock my first iPad off the stand again, and then you'd have to edit more.
Listen, maybe I learned this wrong in Ohio, but I'm pretty sure it was haiku and tanku.
Well, that may be the problem. Yep. Ohio. That's so Ohio.
So Ohio.
These glasses are so dirty again.
Okay. It's not coming up. Well, this might be the Mandela effect. It's just taking tanku out of my vocabulary. Interesting. Anyways, all right. Let's talk about some various famous poets. Some of that we know through different periods, along with a little bit of a description of what they've written or who they are. Mr. William Shakespeare. He was born in 1564 and died in 1616. He was an English playwright and a poet known for his sonnets and plays. His works explore themes of love, mortality, and human experience.
And before we mention Emily Dickinson,
what?
I did a research and it said haiku was 353. So maybe there's variations of haiku 353, 575.
Yeah. So okay, maybe.
So I can't remember.
Well, so maybe it is a haiku can be 353 or 575 because it's 3 lines. And then a tanka is the 7 lines.
Yeah. So any of you poets out there listening, feel free to text us and be like, yes, dead on. So Emily Dickinson.
We do have someone that has reached out that is a poet. Maybe they can clarify. So we'll have them on and be like, all right, tell us the truth. What is a haiku and a tanku?
Emily Dickinson, 1830 to 1886. She was an American poet known for her innovative use of form and punctuation. Her poetry often deals with themes of death, nature, and identity.
Which seems to be a running theme with writers of poetry.
Yep.
A lot of that loss and love and the nature around them. Robert Frost. 1874 to 1963. I didn't realize Robert Frost lived that long, like till into the. I
didn't either.
Yeah, interesting. So he's an American poet celebrated for his depictions of rural life and his use of colloquial language. His famous poems include "The Road Not Taken" and "Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening."
Langston Hughes. He lived from 1902 to 1967. He was a central figure of the Harlem Renaissance. Hughes used his poetry to address social issues and celebrate African American culture and identity.
Yeah. And then one that we know that's more in our timeline was Maya Angelou, an American poet and an active civil rights activist who was known for her powerful works. I remember hearing a lot of her stuff and explore themes of identity, resilience, and African American experiences. Her poem "Still I Rise" is particularly well known, and I read this one. This one was really good.
Yeah, I've read it. I know my wife is a fan. Sylvia Plath. 1932 through 1963. She was an American poet known for her confessional style, exploring personal trauma, mental health, and gender. Her collection, Ariel, is highly regarded.
Ariel or Ariel?
Maybe. Ariel.
Well, it's spelled like Ariel from the Little Mermaid. So that's listen, we don't say things right, so
we do that on purpose. We want to keep you on your toes.
Totally on purpose.
All this is intentional.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Let's talk about Rainer Maria Rilke.
That's intentional.
Yeah. Rainer Maria Rilke. 1875 to 1926, a German poet known for his existential themes and lyrical expression. His most famous work is Letters to a Young Poet. And then Pablo Neruda, 1904 to 1973. This is a Chilean poet and a diplomat. Neruda is famous for his passionate and evocation poetry, which focuses mostly on love and nature and politics. And he won a Nobel Prize in literature in 1971. I didn't even think about we should go over some Nobel Peace Prize or Nobel Prize winners for literature. That is a topic.
But that could be another podcast.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I just was like, I didn't even think about that. We should make that an episode, Nobel Prize winners for literature.
Now, this next one, and I'm intentionally probably going to say it wrong, W.B. Yeats. It could be Yeats, because then I see John Keats, and I know it's not Cates. So, but W.B. Yeats, I'm going to go with that. 1865 to 1939. It is Yeats.
The A doesn't come; it comes after the E.
Okay, well, you never know. It's the English language is so messed up. That's like yeet,
yes,
skirt.
that doesn't make sense.
What is that rap style? Yeet, skirt.
Yeah, you have ox and oxen, but there's box and not boxen.
So he was an Irish poet and playwright, and his work incorporates mythology and explores themes of nationalism, love, and aging. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1923. So that's a second sign that we definitely have to do that.
Tis the signs. John Keats, 1795 to 1821, and he was an English romantic poet known for his vivid imagery and themes of beauty and mortality. His famous works include Ode to a Nightingale and Ode on a Grecian Urn. That sounds interesting. The Grecian Urn.
I love when I see this called 1795 to 1821. And then it makes me want to do a podcast on the first printing press, or how this process
let's do that too. Yes, we'll add that to the list. We'll talk about the first print book press.
Yes, I think that would be really cool. I did throw a couple of things in here about like the current famous poets, because I'm like, we've talked about this. I'm like, I don't know in this day and age how hard it is to be a successful poet. We don't necessarily publish poetry. And I've known some people's like, I'm a poet, and they've written like 13 poems, and they want 13 poems, and they want to put out a book, and it's really not enough, So what do modern poets do? And there's got to be somebody out there who's actually successful in this. So we did a little research, and we did find that there are a couple notable poets shaping the literary world, and they include Ada Limon. And I'm sure I've said that wrong, so I'm sorry. But that was intentional. Not really. The U.S. Poet Laureate, and Dennis Smith, a prominent voice known for work that confronts themes of social justice, identity, and resilience. So Limon's anthology, You Are Here, explores the relationship between people and nature, positioning her as a defining voice in contemporary American poetry. Meanwhile, Smith's latest collection, Bluff, tackles the political and emotional upheaval of recent years, resonating deeply with readers across generations. So if you're like a poet in this day and age, and you're like, how can I really get out there? I would, just like writing fiction, if I'm going to write a horror story, I'm going to study the latest really renowned fiction authors. If I'm writing a vampire novel or whatever it is, just to kind of see what the recent theme is. Not that we're doing this for plagiarism, but inspiration to see where it's leading. We do this when I work with songwriters. You watch their trends and the genres and the way they change. For example, there's not a lot of vibrato in contemporary Christian music right now, and I've actually have some artists I've had to work that out of because it's not hip in this day and age in 2024. So that's what I would suggest if you're a poet. Study these modern poets as well as the ones from the past.
Something I was thinking about is Shel Silverstein. He has collection, like several books of his poetry. I loved those because they had that rhyme. There was an image with it. That black and white, very classic, where the sidewalk ends.
Yes.
All right, and this next one that you put in here, I've heard this name, this Rupi Kaur. Is it Kaur? Core?
Core, I'm assuming. So I'm like I've worked with Indian artists, and core is how they would pronounce it, but I
Okay.
could be wrong.
Yeah, so you put this one. This one was this is a modern one that's highly influential and bring poetry to the mainstream platforms like Instagram. Known for her minimalistic yet impactful style, Core continues to reach a broad audience with themes on womanhood, love, and healing. These poets exemplify kind of like this new landscape within a world that, like you said, poetry is not easy to publish or sell, but it shouldn't be a dying writing style at the same time. It's kind of nice that these people are bringing these traditional themes with modern concerns back to the social scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, even if you're not into writing poetry, you got to appreciate this because it's kind of like Carissa. As a child, learned to write in cursive in school, and it's like that has been a dying art form.
Yeah.
So, art is art. We don't want to lose this connection.
Yeah.
So, somebody listening can be the future of poetry.
Yeah.
So don't if you're like, nobody's going to publish it, still follow your heart.
Something that, and this is just me, that like we went to Books a Million yesterday, and my kiddo needed a calendar to put on her corkboard in her room. And so, of course, you're looking through stuff and you got the Thomas Kincaids and you got all these like the different things with pictures. But then there are the really cool ones with, artwork. But then there's a small inspirational poem on each month. Maybe you're wondering how to publish it. Maybe that might be your option. Images plus your poetry into like a calendar or like a daily type thing. Your daily poem, like a calendar, something like that might be a great way to publish it and not have to necessarily book per se.
Yeah, and even that's like a great tip because you're writing regularly, write every day.
Yeah, so if you kind of like when Danny Black was on and she wrote every day a song, same idea. Yeah. So let's talk about some tips. You said that's a good tip.
We just covered a couple. Read, study poetry, write regularly. This is for any type of writing, and you want to experiment with forms and styles. We actually covered so many different poem styles. So maybe you're into haiku, maybe you're into free form, maybe you're into a sonnet, maybe it's a ballad or an ode. You have to find what you connect with for your style of poetry.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of times when you read poetry, which I read most poetry in high school because it was a required thing, and I've met a couple poets who put out through the author circuit whenever I was going to different author events and stuff. I met a couple poets along the journey that they would do imagery and then they would write their poems about it. But these were people who are very, very introverted. So it was nice to see them step out of their comfort zone. So I feel like a lot of times that's maybe what poets do is this is them stepping out of their comfort zone to express what they're seeing, express what they're feeling, and sharing that.
Yeah, well, that's a great tip because you want to embrace that vulnerability and authenticity. Step out of your comfort zone. Write poems that address, things that matter to you. Or it could be nature, it could be the political state of the world right now. It could be love, loss, but what connects with you.
All right, revise. So revision is a big part of the writing process. We've talked about that in anything. Going through your work and being critical and letting someone else look at it, things like that. But it's a big part of your work. You don't want to hesitate to edit, to rewrite, and refine your work, especially your poems, to make sure it's hitting, which I did that with mine that I put in the end of here. I kind of revamped it a little bit. How many times did you rewrite yours?
Oh, gazillion. I'm still not happy with what I'm going to share today. But I'm not a poet, but it's still,
we know it.
That's why you want to edit and rewrite. It's art. It's a canvas picture in words. So it's going to be flowetry.
Flowetry, darling, flowetry.
Yes.
Essentially, poetry needs to be, it's cemented in literature. It's there. It serves as a very powerful expression across, different emotions, times, societies. And something that you have to remember is that it reminds a very vital part of communicating what's inside. Sometimes I feel like poetry can be a healing for the reader. It can be something that they can relate to. Understanding that there are certain things that fall into the wheelhouse of poetry. There are also parameters that kind of break outside those that can still fit as poetry. You know what I mean? When I say there are haikus, there are sonnets, there are these types of things, there are also things that don't follow those measures, but they also don't come and cross into the world of nonfiction and fiction and biographies and things like that. They still fall into poetry, the poetry realm, right?
Good.
Okay.
I'm just anxious to share our poems.
Yes. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, and I don't know if you did this, but I'll be flat out honest. I used AI. But I argued with AI many times.
Like, that's not it.
Chat GPT probably doesn't like me anymore. Like, no, why'd you say it like that? And I'm like, I give up. I'll use this one. Okay, if you need me to help you, just let me know.
That's funny.
Ode to the glass shattering voice. In halls where legends find their spark, a voice arose, fierce, bold, and stark. With power raw, a sound so rare, it shattered glass with vocal flair. From Mythbusters' thrill to Dr. Oz's delight, each note a beacon pure and bright. Though fate once altered singing's call, a fire for teaching rose through all. Guided voices from near and far, a coach, a singer, a guiding star. Though stages fade, the spirit remains. The legend lives in voice and name. Now, see, this is where you gotta like understand the meaning, because part of it was like, hey, I got glass in my throat. You can hear my nerve damage kicking in now. So it has affected me with singing and teaching, but I'm still doing an amazing job. And I was like, you know what? I don't need to say that in there. Say it without saying it. So I kept rewriting and rewriting.
Arrogant? Yeah.
Yes. It already sounds arrogant anyway.
Well, I didn't even title mine. I should have titled mine, but I didn't.
Okay, hold on. And no to Jaime not living in Florida or something. I want you to want an ode to Florida sand.
Okay, well, I'll read mine. Okay.
All right.
No judgment.
And then I'll come up with a sarcastic name because I hate you for moving.
All right. Florida's sun by the white sandy shore. Wait, I'm gonna start over here. Because who put Sandy like the name Sandy on mine? Did you write that?
I have not touched that. It says white sand, sandy shore.
I was like, that is not what I wrote.
I thought it was something cool. All
right. Okay. In Florida's sun by the white sand shore lives a woman with daughters 4. A wife who juggles life with flair and chaos, she finds humor there. Tattooing designs that surprise while cutting hair with stylist ties. At night she writes of demons and angels, with her character's fate knowingly dangles. Her podcast spins tales of wild fiction, inspiring more supernatural addiction. With life's madness, she's always in tune. I can't even talk.
Maestro. I rub off on you. I'm telling you, a maestro. Put that down on the list.
Yes.
Maestro.
Maestro of mayhem under the moon.
Okay, I got it. Yours like smoked mine. And just be honest with me. Did you write it yourself or did you use AI?
So what I did, I wrote down what I wanted mine to have. So this is how I did mine. This is where you may have failed. Huh?
I just must not have the right prompts if you did that, because I did
this. I wrote mine half myself and half with AI. Okay. So what I did was I put in a little bit of like the how I wanted the rhyme scheme. I wanted to have this. I put down Florida white sands, all the things that I do. I put all these little things. Basically, I wrote a poem that did not rhyme. I wrote a poem that did not have any kind of structure per se. And then I said, turn this into a poem.
Oh, see? Yeah.
Yeah, so I said, turn all these sentences into a poem.
I was like, hey, write a poem about me. I teach these rock stars. I wrote this book. I've been on TV. Da-da-da-da-da. And just let it go. I didn't say anything about rhyme scheme or like.
Yeah. So it's kind of like I did the work in a sense, but I was like, okay, I don't know how to make this rhyme. And then like you saw me in their edit. I don't know if you saw me in their editing. Like, I had changed some stuff. I'm like, I don't like that, because it tried to make it seem like I wrote something that bites. And I'm like, I don't write books that bite. I'm like, I write songs about, originally had it as angels and demons, but then I switched it to demons and angels, so that way at the end my character's fate knowingly dangles. Yeah, so yeah, I wrote a lot of it because there's certain things I wanted it to do, and then I'm like, make this rhyme and sound like a poem.
Yeah, no, yours looked tight and concise, so mine was like, and I don't know if you caught it. I went back in, I hit it with AI and said, gotta shorten this. And then I didn't like it, and it had a couple words in there. I was like, that doesn't sound right. And I was like, okay, it's good enough. I'm never going to be happy with this.
That's the key with people. That's the difference when you look at someone's AI and they don't give it the parameters, and they don't give it, AI is just going to come up with whatever. But if you do a lot of the work and then input it into AI can help you almost as an editor reformulate things. And we've talked about that. That's what I did. All right. This has been a nice episode on episode.
Put that one down on the list. I tell you what, I'm not going to win any contests of poetry, so I'm not entering with Karisa because she smoked me. Yeah, whatever. That was pretty good.
All right. So this has been a good episode. Again, as always, we love doing these episodes, even if we don't know much, because we're not poets. But we thought a great thing to do is an ode to the poets out there, and do an episode on the basic fundamentals of poetry, talk about some past poets, some current poets, and kind of revamp some of the ideas of what poetry is all about. So it stays alive.
And if you watch the podcast, if you listen to the podcast and you're a poet, write a poem about Karisa and I and the podcast. We love to.
I don't know how good. Yeah. They can't talk.
Yeah.
We've never seen them walk.
Jaime mumbles with nose of red. Half the time he's sleepy and he looks like he's dead.
Yes. But if you do want to email us some of your poetry about us, you can go to allwayswritepodcast@gmail.com. Send us that. Or you can go over to our website, allwayswritepodcast at, oh my gosh,
allwayswritepodcast.com.
allwayswritepodcast.com. And click on those little icons. You can follow us. You can share. You can reach out. However you want to do it. Please, please, please continue to follow, subscribe. We love it.
Yep. We're having fun.
Yes. So much fun. All right. Anyways, this has been a good episode. Until next time, darling, I'm author Karisa DeLay.
And I'm author Jaime Vendera.
Until next time, always write.